They're here that distort the news. You don't know what law is. You don't know what justice is. Where's the news agents of Nigeria? What are they? You don't know that God is a God of justice. You don't know that. That God in heaven is a God of justice. You don't know that.
Hello Biafrans and lovers of freedom. Welcome to Biafra Battle Cry TV, under the leadership of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, IPOB leader. Be part of history, every voice matters. Watch as everyday Nigerians speak truth to power and rally behind the Free Nnamdi Kanu Now movement. The words, "You came to me with sword and shield, but these days I destroy you in the name of God of Israel," are a modern interpretation of a line from the biblical story of David and Goliath. The original words were spoken by David to the giant Goliath before their famous battle. Original biblical quote, in 1 Samuel 17 verse 45, David declares, "You come to me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." Significance of the biblical story. The tale of David and Goliath is a classic underdog story that illustrates the power of faith and courage over physical strength and intimidation. Reliance on faith, David, a young shepherd boy, rejected the traditional armor and weapons of King Saul. Instead, he chose a sling and 5 smooth stones, relying on his faith in God to give him victory. A spiritual battle. David's words framed the confrontation not as a contest between two warriors, but as a spiritual battle between God and Goliath's mockery. His confidence was not in his own ability but in God's power. The giant's defeat. In a famous turn of events, David's single stone struck Goliath in the forehead, causing the giant to fall. David then used Goliath's own sword to behead him, leading to the defeat of the entire Philistine army.
The rivers hum, warriors too.
In ancient times, a lone shepherd challenged an armored giant, armed with only a stone and unwavering faith. The boy David faced Goliath, not with a sword, but in the name of the Lord. This is the story of an underdog confronting a formidable power, a theme that echoes through history. In modern-day Nigeria, another battle unfolds. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, a broadcaster and separatist leader, represents the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB. The group demands an independent state in the country's southeast, a territory that fought and lost a brutal civil war decades ago. Kanu's weapon is not a sling, but his words, broadcast through the airwaves of Radio Biafra. He speaks to the frustration and marginalization felt by many in the Igbo community, calling for defiance against the Nigerian state. To his supporters, he is a courageous freedom fighter. To the government, he is a terrorist. The Nigerian government, powerful and heavily armed, is the Goliath in this narrative. It has responded to Kanu's challenge with legal force, arresting him on charges of treason and terrorism. The battle, initially fought on the airwaves, moved to the courtroom and the halls of power. Kanu's dramatic rearrest in 2021, orchestrated in Kenya and transported back to Nigeria, sparked accusations of human rights violations.
The silver moon, our hearts are strong.
In the courts, Kanu's legal team has argued that his rendition was illegal and that the government's case is baseless. They have faced a series of setbacks, including the Supreme Court reinstating terrorism charges after a lower court had dismissed them. In October 2025, in a dramatic courtroom turn, Kanu dismissed his legal team and declared there were no valid charges against him, choosing not to present a defense. The Goliath of the Nigerian state stands firm. Yet, Kanu's action in court, the ultimate act of defiance within the system, seeks to undermine the legitimacy of his prosecution itself. The outcome remains uncertain. The giant is strong, but the story of the underdog, armed with unwavering belief, continues to captivate. And the world is watching, waiting to see if this modern-day David will triumph over a seemingly insurmountable foe.
It's free. We march for truth and destiny.
That is called the news. You don't know what law is. You don't know what justice is. Where's the news agents of Nigeria? What are they? You don't know that God is a God of justice. You don't know that? That God in heaven is a God of justice. You don't know that?
Reports confirm that on Monday, October 27, 2025, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu appeared at the Federal High Court in Abuja for terrorism trial. During his appearance, he made references to God as the source of justice and announced a significant shift in his legal strategy. Kanu's declaration in court declined to open defense. Kanu, who had previously indicated he would call witnesses, informed the court that he would not enter a defense. Claimed no valid charge, he stated that after reviewing his case file, he had concluded that there were no legally valid charges against him that required a defense. Appealed to divine justice. Arriving at the courthouse, Kanu was recorded saying, "God in heaven is the God of justice." This statement was seen by many, including human rights lawyer, as a defiant act, portraying his case as a battle against what he considers a corrupt and unjust Nigerian government. Criticized media reporting. Kanu also reportedly addressed the court to complain about biased media coverage, which he claimed failed to accurately report his position. Legal maneuvers and the court's response. Judge's instruction. Presiding Justice James Omotosho advised Kanu to formalize his position by filing a written address explaining why he believes no valid charge exists. Adjournment. The judge subsequently adjourned the case to November 4, 5, and 6 to allow for the adoption of the final written addresses.
We march for truth and destiny.
Never be tried in any court of law in Nigeria.
Say it again.
That's what the law says.
Say it again.
Anybody standing in trial or coming to try me is a terrorist. That's what their law says.
As simple as that.
Not me.
As simple as that.
Section 2, subsection 3F of Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act. That's what it says. Any court considered to try me is committing an act of terrorism.
Yes.
Very clear. You cannot violate a treaty that Nigeria entered into and then come to try that very person is not done anywhere in the world. So you must be aware of that. So that is why there is all these ridiculous delays. That is what Supreme Court said. I did not jump bail. My home was invaded. They came to kill me and I survived. They came to Kenya to kidnap me, brought me back to this country and seeking to try me, which the law says cannot happen. You cannot violate a treaty that Nigeria entered into and then hope to stand on that illegality to conduct a trial is not done anywhere in the world. I don't have it in my case.
We march for truth and destiny.
International law provides a strong legal basis for the argument that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu's alleged kidnapping and extraordinary rendition could invalidate the legal proceedings against him. His claim of no valid charge reflects this argument, which has been affirmed by international bodies and Nigerian courts at various points. International and regional legal arguments. Fundamental human rights. The act of extraordinary rendition, the unlawful, extra-legal transfer of an individual from one country to another, is a clear violation of fundamental human rights guaranteed under multiple international instruments. Right to liberty and security. The African Charter on Human and People's Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR, to which Nigeria is a state party, protect individuals from arbitrary arrest and detention. Right to due process. Extraordinary rendition, by definition, circumvents the proper legal processes like extradition, thereby denying an individual access to a tribunal to challenge their removal. African Charter. The African Charter on Human and People's Rights prohibits arbitrary arrest and detention and upholds the right of every individual to have their cause heard by an impartial tribunal. UN Working Group. The UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention has affirmed that Kanu was subjected to an arbitrary arrest and extraordinary rendition. The group called for his unconditional release and compensation. Impact on domestic legal proceedings. When a person is brought before a court through an illegal act like kidnapping, it raises significant questions about the court's jurisdiction. Legal scholars argue that allowing such a trial to proceed would condone the government's illegal conduct, undermining the rule of law. Developments in Kanu's case. Court of Appeal ruling. In October 2022, the Nigerian Court of Appeal dropped the terrorism charges against Kanu and ordered his release, citing his illegal rendition. The court ruled that the Federal High Court lacked the jurisdiction to try him, as the process of bringing him to Nigeria violated international treaties. Supreme Court reversal. This victory was short-lived, as the Supreme Court of Nigeria, in December 2023, overturned the Court of Appeal's decision. It ruled that while Kanu's abduction was illegal, it did not deprive the court of its jurisdiction to proceed with the trial. Continued detention. Despite calls from international bodies for his release, Kanu remains in detention. This has led many to argue that the Nigerian government continues to disregard international legal obligations and its own court rulings. The significance of Kanu's action. By claiming no valid charge and refusing to engage with the court process, Kanu and his legal team are pursuing a strategy that aligns with these international law principles. His legal maneuvers highlight the conflict between Nigerian domestic legal precedent and international human rights law. His decision can be interpreted as a defiant act that seeks to expose the perceived illegitimacy of his prosecution on the world stage. Thanks Biafrans and lovers of freedom worldwide for watching Biafra Battle Cry TV. We criticized Igbo elites who only speak on television or social media. #free Nnamdi Kanu now.